Today I want to share some good tips for those starting a meditation practice. If you're one of those people, or perhaps have been finding it difficult to stick to this new habit, or are resuming your practice after a break, this video is for you. So keep watching. Number one tip is to find an inspiring approach. This could mean buying a book on meditation by a good, reputable author. You can find a lot of excellent books on Amazon, on Audible if you prefer listening, or just in your local library, or perhaps even on your friend's bookshelf. There's plenty of meditation teachers and mindfulness instructors who are pretty big names, and their lectures could be available right here on YouTube completely for free. There's a lot of courses offered online and hopefully also soon offline. Some employers offer mindfulness courses to their staff, and you might be one of the lucky ones. And every city or big town has instructors offering meditation courses. I think a common problem when people first take up meditation practice is that there is an impression that you just take this meditation thing and do it. And that's not how it works. In order for it to be sustainable, meditation practice needs a context, a framework to operate. This helps with maintaining inspiration for the practice, understanding it better, making your life suitable for the practice, and the positive change it brings. And this practice can be spiritual or religious, but it doesn't have to be. For example, outside of any religious context, MBSR, MBCT courses are a great start. They are low threshold and completely secular, and it's a holistic program. But for some people they might be quite pricey. So if you're more spiritually inclined, you may want to check out your local yoga school, what they have on offer, but keep in mind that their meditation practice might differ from the typical mindfulness meditation. Or you can find a Buddhist group. On top of offering specifically Buddhist teachings and retreats for Buddhists, these groups very often have meditation classes where no Buddhism is taught. So if you're more on the atheist, non-religious side and on a tight budget, these classes could work well for you. Whichever approach you choose, you can always try different things, experiment and see what resonates most with you. The second tip is to make use of apps and guided meditations. When it comes to applications and online resources for meditation, there's almost too much to choose from. Here on YouTube alone, you can find literally endless supply of recordings for guided meditation. But if you're concerned with the quality of what's on offer, meditation apps are a good bet. Some of the most popular mobile applications for mindfulness meditation are Calm, Headspace, 10% Happier, and Waking Up. There you can find not only separate recordings but also whole courses. And a lot of content is available for free. Yay! If you want me to make a video specifically on meditation apps, please let me know in the comments below. In my practice, I use Insight Timer because I typically meditate with just a timer with no guidance, but when I want to have a guided meditation, Insight Timer has a good selection as well. Now, their meditations and courses are very diverse, it's not just mindfulness, but if you're more familiar with mindfulness techniques and mindfulness-based approaches, you can search for them specifically and choose a recording which is consistent with what you've been doing. Every instructor has, even within the same tradition, has their own style, their own voice, their tempo, and of course language, and you can choose the one which you love most. And they also have recordings by some very famous and qualified instructors available completely for free, which is great. Now, one important thing to keep in mind when you're working with guided meditations is that guided meditation is a very recent invention. Yeah, that's right. Over the thousands of years people have been meditating, they hadn't used guided meditation recordings to meditate, for obvious reasons, right? The purpose they serve is to make you familiar with the technique, to help you along the way. Since nowadays we have this wonderful possibility to record things and to listen to them as we meditate, it's like having an additional support. to guide us and to take us along the practice. So this works great in the beginning when your mind easily wanders off, when you're figuring out the technique, when you need this support. But as you're becoming more comfortable with the meditation, it's better to start choosing recordings with less guidance, more space, more silence, where you can just continue on your own, or just ditch the recording and practice with the timer. I feel like since we have so many guided meditation options offered all over the place, it almost creates an impression that you can't meditate without someone in your ears. But you can. And if you picked a technique and it works for you, you're doing it well, and you feel that you don't need any guided meditation, it means you don't. Another tip which all beginner meditators should hear is to arrange the practical side, where and when you do your practice. It should be somewhere nice, quiet, with little disturbance at the time of the day when you feel awake, not foggy, not too tired, so that you can actually do it without drowsing off. Then it's important to work out the posture that works for you. And I have a video on the meditation posture. Please check out the link in the description below and watch the video if you haven't. Unfortunately, I see this part often skipped or given little attention to, and more often than not, I see people sitting in a way which is not optimal and not comfortable if you sit more than just a couple of minutes. Briefly, you just need to keep your back and shoulders straight with your chin a bit down, legs crossed like this or like this, one foot in front of the other, but only if you can do it. And you need a proper cushion, which doesn't have to be a fancy meditation cushion, it just needs to keep your bum elevated. And you can do it frugally. And hands like this or like this, whichever you find comfortable. You can keep your eyes half closed or open, but avoid closing your eyes completely, especially if you're prone to drowsing off in meditation, because fully closed eyes won't help you with staying awake. Now, this posture works well if you're flexible enough, if you've been killing it at yoga, you have no chronic pains or conditions that could make sitting hard for you. But if you can't tick any of these boxes, no worries, there are adjustments you can make to the posture, including totally going flat lying down on your back. And it's way better to meditate comfortably lying on your back than to try to impress yourself sitting in the posture that's causing you suffering. There's enough suffering in life already, so if the meditation posture seems to only add more, feel welcome to adjust it. And you can watch my video on what you can do following another link in the description below. And of course, if you need some additional equipment like a chair, a bench, a belt, 5 more cushions, make sure you have it nearby when you're sitting down to meditate. And obviously make sure that your clothes allow you to sit in meditation and you don't feel cold or hot during the session. That's just being practical. Tip number 4 is to find a meditation technique that works and to know what you're doing in your meditation. There's so many instructions on how to meditate, so many traditions in schools, but what meditation really boils down to is training your mind to stay on the meditation object. When your mind wanders off or your attention fades, bring it back. When you hear an object or a technique, it may sound like you're at the supermarket choosing different ice cream flavors or something. But it's not an attitude we want to cultivate with respect to meditation. There are techniques which work fantastic when you're working with a teacher in a specific tradition. You know what you're doing because they explain things to you and take care of you doing it well, and this approach really resonates with you, and this is the path that you can commit to. If you just like the idea of meditation and you want to try this thing on your own, make it a good habit and make the most out of your time in meditation, then your go-to technique is mindfulness of breathing. It means just following the sensations of the breath in your nostrils as you breathe in, breathe out naturally, and bring your mind back to the breath each time it wanders away. Mindfulness of breathing works for 100% of the people who breathe. But unfortunately, some people don't get it immediately and they keep having obstacles, such as trying to control the breath, or maybe they just don't like it, they feel bored. And that's okay. If that sounds like you, then you may want to try to go to tip number 1. Find a group, a teacher, a course, an approach that resonates with you and stick to it. Then you may end up deepening your body scan practice, or resting in open presence, or working with a mantra or something. As long as the style and the tradition feel like something you can commit to, and the teacher is someone reliable, not a quack. A mistake here would be to pick one technique which may work nicely within the whole approach. It has some deep meaning to it, like a mantra or a Zen practice of just sitting, and take it out of context. This way the practice can become shallow, not do much in terms of your general state of mind, and also not serve the purposes it was meant to serve. I feel this is something that very often happens with the practice of open awareness or just sitting. Because it sounds so misleadingly simple, you may feel like you're nailing it when you're barely scratching the surface. As I said earlier, meditation is mind training, so it should feel like training, not like sitting around having rest or fantasizing. If you're starting your meditation practice and it feels like you're having rest, then it's because you are. So not like that. That's why it is important to make sure you know what you're doing in your practice, and the way I recommend to go about it is to start with something foolproof, like mindfulness of breathing, the best, or body scan. Or then if you want to explore the whole contemplative world, then try following some specific courses or teachers or groups, so that you can really get deeper into the practice you feel drawn to. The next tip nicely flows out from here, and it's keep an open mind. Beginner's mind is actually one of the attitudes of mindfulness, and what it means is that we don't want to get too serious or too rigid. We want to be playful, to experiment, to surprise ourselves, and to allow ourselves to be surprised. There are so many things available nowadays, and even if you feel you haven't been successful in your practice, there is surely something that could serve specifically you in your specific situation. And you might have to try many different things, techniques, approaches, before you find something you can commit to. And then you also might discover midway that it's not working, and go and find something else that's more effective. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean you should change the practice each time you face some challenge or a difficulty, then it just won't work. So there is a sort of balance, right? What's more important is that you maintain a commitment to developing your mind, to becoming a better version of yourself every day, learning to live a more satisfying, wholesome life, and meditation is an excellent way to help you with all these things. It's not a way to boost your ego, to make you sexier or better paid, or let alone more bigoted or narrow-minded. We don't want that. So it's important to stay true to yourself, try things with an open mind, and try your own capacities, that you can actually do these things and that you can actually really benefit from them. And when we do find something that's working, it's important to make a realistic commitment and stick to it. When we are just getting familiar with the practice, it's very easy to get carried away and want to just nail it and really get all these benefits they talk about, all of them, preferably with home delivery today. So we get into practice with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of expectations. And then life happens and we find it difficult to find time for the practice, we get bored by it, we don't become super happy all the time as we hoped we would be. So the danger is that we lose our interest and decide to do something else instead. And that's a real bummer, because mindfulness practice is not a sprint and not even a marathon. There is no destination we need to arrive at as quickly as possible, no amount of kilometers we need to perform. Mindfulness practice is a lifetime journey, and the only goal is moving on one step at a time. And it can be a very small step as long as we're moving on consistently. Like with any skill, regularity and consistency work much better than pushing hard and then giving up. You may start with just 10-15 minutes a day. That totally works. It can even be 5 minutes a day if that's what you got, if you really put your effort into these 5 minutes. If you have problems with attention deficit or strong anxiety, 5 minutes can be your maximum. And then it's a perfect daily amount for you. And then when you feel more comfortable, you can increase the length. But sitting for an hour when you're not even sure exactly what you're doing and whether you're doing it well can be a total waste of time, which will only turn you away from the practice. So keeping it realistic and small in the beginning can help you avoid these setbacks when you drop the practice for a while and then it's hard to get back on track because you're got used to not meditating. When you really don't feel like practicing even your 10 minutes, maybe you're going through some emotional turmoil or hardship, you can also do some other technique, something more soothing, comforting. Maybe a nice guided meditation to help you deal with the difficult emotions, with anxiety, or with difficult people. It's definitely better to do something shorter and less demanding than to skip the session altogether. And of course, keep in mind that if you have a setback, it's not a reason to beat yourself up. The practice is there to help you, not to judge you. And it's never too late or too early to start again. And then, by keeping our commitment consistent, no matter how it's going, and our expectations low, we can start really noticing a change over time, gradually. And the last bit. If we want the practice to really help us change our life to the better, it's important to take it off the cushion and introduce some mindfulness into your daily life also. If you're putting an effort into sitting for 20 minutes a day, trying your best, and then you do not care a bit about how you live through the other 23 hours and 40 minutes, the maths just don't add up, right? It's hard to compensate for these 23 hours and 40 minutes with one short meditation session, if these hours are full of total chaos, craziness, and debauchery. We really want to make sure we don't create a huge conflict between how we want our mind to be during these 20 minutes and what we allow it to be when we are going about our day. And that's not easy, especially if your life is challenging, if you have a stressful, competitive job, a bunch of small kids running around, family, health, money issues. But there are simple ways you can make your mind less hectic, which also makes it much more useful at coping with all these challenges. And this can be, first of all, knowing your boundaries. Not taking an extra task, an extra commitment, giving away all your free time to some iffy things. You need that leisure. You need some unstructured time for optimal brain functioning if you want to learn new things, have some creative ideas, etc. It's not a crime to just take a walk or just sit in the chair daydreaming or sleeping the hours you need, for God's sake. You can do it because you're worth it, okay? Another thing you can do is cut down on multitasking. Our brains cannot multitask. What they do when we multitask is switching from one thing to another very quickly, so it makes an impression that we are doing two things at a time when we're actually doing half of each with a greater chance of a mistake, reduced quality, and we're not getting much benefit of these things. Trying to write an important email while you're also in a Zoom meeting or also cooking or eating your meal is not going to benefit you in the long run. So, as one of my teachers says, make sure you're doing what you're doing when you're doing it, and that you're not doing what you're not doing when you're not doing it. And then maybe from that spot of doing one thing at a time, preferably, you can go into doing one thing mindfully, really being present on that walk or in cooking or eating that meal or driving that car of yours. You can choose one activity and have it as a daily routine, a ritual. If you want some tips on what activities could work especially well as mindful routines, write down in the comments below and I'll be happy to share my own experience. And then on top of that, you can have small breaks during the day. Set a timer to have regular pauses, just to have a few breaths or a minute of silence, and then continue. You will notice that it really helps with the meditation practice, and additionally to that, it also makes your day flow nicer, it makes you happier and more efficient. That was all for today. Don't hesitate to give me a like if you find this video helpful. That really helps my channel to grow, which means more videos for you. And please consider subscribing if you haven't yet.